because it's 9:20, I'd like to get on to the business of the day. So today we have a very, like I said in my post, a very admirable gentleman, a person whose energy is unmatched, and a person whose security expertise is also something to admire. And this is Kelvin Ngware, Kevin Maina Ngware. And it's a pleasure to have you around. And we look forward to listening to what you have to say about. I know security is a huge aspect that can be spoken about in 30 minutes, and that's why the topic of today read a sneak peek into cloud security. And as I pass it over to Kevin, what we are looking at getting to understand from this talk is just maybe in three vectors. The biggest factors that people that force organizations to invest in cloud security. Are they afraid of being hacked, or what is it? And then the safety around the cloud. How safe is it? Being a new technology, being a new platform all of these facts, how safe is it? And then also, and lastly, being a Microsoft security person, we'd also like you to give us a view of the Microsoft security ecosystem. How is it growing, and so forth. So over to you, Kevin. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Thanks for the question. So I'll begin with just some introduction, but let me share my screen first as I do that. So you let me know once you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's up.
All right. Thank you. So as you have heard Sam saying, my name is Kelvin Ngware, and I'm a technical consultant for BY based here in Nairobi. And basically, in my day-to-day activities, I handle Microsoft security and basically everything to do with the cloud security, but with a focus on Microsoft's technology. And I'll just dive straight into the discussion for today, the questions that have been raised. And to begin with, as we know, cloud.
Sorry, Kevin. Are you sharing a particular slide, or still the meeting?
I'm sharing a slide.
Oh, sorry. We are not seeing it.
Are you seeing
Think,
it?
yeah, we are not seeing it.
Let me stop sharing and then I reshare.
All right.
Window. Oh, I see.
You shared a window.
Technology. Yeah, all good.
Awesome. Yeah, it's up.
You can see the slide now.
Yeah.
Awesome. So intro, that's it. So we can just type into the question. So the first issue that normally arises with security is about the reason as to why these people should be going to cloud security and investing in cloud security. As you know, cloud is we can say it's a new technology, because at the moment is when organizations are really focusing on going to cloud. But the question that arises is why should this organization invest in cloud security? Is it because of the compliance, or they fear being hacked, which is in terms of security? As you have heard in the recent past, most organizations have been hacked several times, and that actually is a factor to incorporate security in their workloads. We can't really say that compliance weighs in more than security in determining the investment for cloud security, but both works hands in hands. So for instance, if we look at the compliance side of it, these organizations, they need to comply to regulations such as the ISO 27001, the payment card industry, which is for mostly used in the banking sector and the financials. And even in our case here in Kenya, for instance, we have the Kenya Data Protection and Privacy Act. So an organization is required by the Kenya Data Protection Act to make sure that they have protected the sensitive data that they are currently holding in their cloud environment. And when you talk about cloud environment here, we're also including what these organizations are handling in their emails, in their files, not just in Azure. So that includes also the Microsoft 365 environment or the Google Drive workspace in case of those users who are using the Google side of it. Another concern also that drives people to invest in cloud security is now the fear of being hacked. And we have heard of several data breach that have happened, and which leads also to brand reputation. So this is a factor that is really driving also organizations to make sure that they have protected their cloud resources and they cannot suffer any data breach in that sense. So as we have indicated that the two areas work hands in hands, which is the security and the compliance side of it. So I'll take you through this kind of complicated slide here, which basically shows the two side of things, which is the security and the compliance, because they actually go hand in hand in making sure that your cloud environment is secure. So to begin with, if you can start with insider risk. So at the bottom here, you'll see the insider risk side of it, which is actually part of the compliant. So insider risk is someone within the organization who is capable of being involved in a data breach. So that's one area that of concern that most organizations have in terms of being compliant, because this person has the capability of accessing the organization sensitive data, because this is an internal person. They have access to their emails, so they can be able to transfer this data outside and share with inappropriate people, and the organization will be at risk. Maybe a potential sabotage in the case of maybe there was a competitor in the market and this person has leaked out some information that might lead to their downfall or something like that. So that's on the compliance side of it, which organization are really interested in implementing. So the other side also that we looked at is on the security, which is now on the upper side of this. So as you can see on the security, we actually got different areas that the organizations need to protect, from identity, endpoint, and even the applications that these users access. So in this case, I'll just cover the identity for today in the interest of time. So for instance, if the identity, because it's actually the most common way that workers utilize to infiltrate an environment. So in terms of the identity is whereby you'll find that a user is using weak passwords in the organization, or maybe they are storing their passwords somewhere, something like that. So if a bad actor or an hacker gains access to these credentials of this specific user, the account can be compromised. And in that case, as soon as the account is compromised, what this actor normally do is to look for other accounts that they can be able to compromise within the organization. So they begin to do a lateral movement search to look for any account that they can infiltrate. So if they find an account and they're lucky enough to get an admin account, they now give themselves privileged access to the organization's materials. And in that sense, they can compromise the whole domain or even steal files and perform the malicious activities. And the data breach that we normally hear, maybe they request ransom from your organization so that you can be able to get back your data so that they cannot leak your data. So that's a scenario of how an organization can easily get compromised. And at the end of this presentation, I'll show you a recent incident that happened the previous weekend of a similar kind, whereby an account credentials were compromised and the user was able to perform lateral movements and even use the privileged access to be able to infiltrate other activities. So that's the comparison and the relationship between the security and the compliance. And if you have any question, you can just feel free to stop me in between, or you can also paste your question in the chat box. So moving on to the next area that we have in terms of the cloud security. So as you know, Microsoft is kind of new in terms of cloud security. In the past, Microsoft wasn't really focusing in security products, but in the recent past, we have seen that Microsoft is really invested in cloud security, and this is really pulling people to coming to Microsoft security products. But why is it that people have changed their perceptions toward Microsoft security product? So one of the reasons for this is the way Microsoft have been improving the features that they provide for cloud security. So for instance, they have been developing like the CASB solution, which is the cloud access security brokers. So for instance, like the Defender for Cloud Apps is an example of a cloud access security brokers. They have been developing a very powerful SIM solutions and XDR, which are based on artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that's one of the factors that is really pushing people towards utilizing Microsoft security so they can leverage on such existing capabilities. The other area that Microsoft has done is to increase the security focus. So in the increasing of the security focus, Microsoft has really invested billions of dollars towards security and its research, and even in terms of the manpower that is available. So for instance, Microsoft has a specialized team known as the Microsoft Response Team, and another one, Microsoft Emergency Response Team, and a Microsoft Azure Safeguards Team. So basically, this team assist users who are now us in terms of making sure that our cloud resources are also protected in the areas that maybe we might not be having a view. And at the bottom here, I've included a screenshot of a scenario that we got a response from one of the Microsoft Azure Safeguards team. So basically, this team is tasked with making sure that the resources that you have deployed in Azure are secure. And in the case that there is any malicious activity that has been identified, they'll be able to notify you. So in this case, they sent out an email to global administrators of the tenant. So the global administrators will be able to be notified of any potential malicious activity that is happening in your environment because the response team were able to identify it and you can take action towards it. So the other area that also Microsoft is winning is on the compliance and the certification side of it, because as we know, for you to be able to be trusted with all the data that organizations and users are putting in your cloud environment, you must prove that you're capable of protecting all these files that and data that users are storing in your infrastructure. So Microsoft has made sure that they have obtained all the required certifications and they are compliant and they have proved that they can provide security to your data. And the next reason also is the industry recognition that Microsoft has been getting. So Gartner and Forrester are independent bodies that they normally perform uh, research and surveys in different products in the market. And actually, in the recent report that Gartner released on the different SIM solutions in the market, Microsoft is currently leading in terms of the service that they provide in the SIM area of it. So that's really motivating users towards changing their perception in Microsoft security. At least now they see how serious Microsoft is in terms of securing their cloud environment and providing tools and services to protect their data. So the last one, which is really also pushing and changing people's perspective, is on the customer feedback. So basically, in customer feedback, what Microsoft does is they conduct sessions with the customers and they collect feedback from these customers. So in these sessions, they try to understand how these customers are utilizing these products, and they get to understand what they can do to change this product. So in that sense, at least now, any product that Microsoft releases or any change, at least some input from it came from the customer, and they're happy with the solution that Microsoft has provided because they were part of providing the input directly to Microsoft. So those are some of the reasons as to why people are really changing their perceptions towards Microsoft security in the recent past, because a while back, people were really not keen on Microsoft security because these actions were not happening on Microsoft ends, but now it's happening and people are flowing on our side. So we can actually say Microsoft is about to become the superpower in terms of cloud security. So you can put it like that. So again, another complicated slide here. So I try to fit in all the solutions that Microsoft is providing for you out here to be able to utilize in the environment in terms of protecting the workloads and the data. So we can begin. We'll just have a brief overview of the different solutions. Maybe at a later sessions, you can have a look at each and every service and tool that Microsoft provides. So as you can see, Microsoft provides an end-to-end solution in terms of protecting all the whole environment that the user interacts with. So from the overall, which is the security operation, so Microsoft provides a cloud native SIM and SOA solution integrated with the UABA, which is the user entity behavior analytics. So that's also now the machine learning and artificial intelligence capability of Microsoft, and including now the XDR, which is now the extended detection and response. So basically, the combination of the two is what now will make a SOC operations team. And on the defender side of it, user by now will get those different specific products to be able to protect now the endpoint devices. So these are the laptops that you use, the mobile devices, and all that. So you'll be able to protect from the endpoint to the data, what you're accessing with your mobile devices. So we got the software as a service applications that you normally use in your mobile phones, in your laptops, which can include now the maybe Dropbox, the Google Drive, and all that. So Microsoft has provided all that under one umbrella in terms of their solutions for you to be able to protect the data and the endpoints that you're utilizing. Also, in terms of the infrastructure that you have in cloud, it has the capability to extend to AWS and even Google Cloud. So it's not really just focusing on protecting the workloads in Microsoft. So even if you are using AWS, you have infrastructure in Google Cloud, or even on premise, you can utilize this service known as Azure Arc to be able also to protect your on-premise environment, because Microsoft is not really forcing you to migrate to cloud environment. So even if you still have your on-premise environment, you can still leverage these security services to be able to also protect the infrastructure and the data that you have. So this is just an overview of the different services that you can be able to utilize in your Azure environment, and this is provided by Microsoft. So moving on to the next issue that was raised, which is how safe can we say that this cloud environment is. So basically, in terms of cloud safety, we cannot say it's a sole responsibility of Microsoft or the cloud service provider, maybe AWS or Google, to ensure that the cloud is safe. So it normally operates in a shared responsibility model. So there is what you are responsible for doing, and there is what Microsoft is responsible. So Microsoft provides the infrastructure for you to be able to host your data and applications in cloud. And then your responsibility is also to make sure that access to your data is also secured, because it's a shared model. It's not a sole responsibility. And the way Microsoft is assisting users in making sure that their data is also secured in terms of their responsibility is using a framework which is known as a zero trust framework. The zero trust is actually not a product specific. We cannot say it's a Microsoft product, but it's just an industry-wise framework. I believe even Fortinet, the Sophos, those other security products, they also have their zero trust framework that they advise the clients to use. So basically, zero trust is a framework that assumes that you have to verify everything that is accessing your organization. So you don't trust anything, even if it's an internal person. You see the risk of the insider risk activities. So you have to verify everything that is originating and accessing your environment. So the zero trust operates under 3 principles and 6 pillars. And basically, I'm sure you might have heard of the term zero trust principles before. So zero trust operates with the 3 principles, which is the verify explicitly, which means that you'll always have to authenticate and authorize your users before they access any of your resources, and also using the principles of least privilege so that you can be able to limit access to the resources that you're using. And the other principle is known as the assume breach. And basically, in the assume breach is whereby you're advised to always assume that your environment, no matter how secure you believe the environment is, you should always anticipate that a hacker might find their way in your environment. So those are the 3 principles that the zero trust operates with. And with the 3 principles in mind is when now you can move ahead to implement the security measures in the 6 pillars that the zero trust operates with. So zero trust operates with the 6 pillars, which are I believe now these are the layers that Sam was asking at the beginning. So you have to figure out how you can be able to protect your environment from how the users, which are now the identities and the endpoints, how they utilize your network to access the data in your organization, the applications, and the infrastructure. So basically, that's the zero trust 6 pillars, and those are the 6 layers that you need to make sure that you have protected in your environment. So you can start with the identities and the endpoints, because those are the core pillars and actually the weak link, because the identities is where the human is involved, and that's where now they're responsible in setting the password and maybe making sure the MFA is enabled and all that. So identity and the endpoint is the beginning of the access layers in making sure that whatever, if you make sure that this area is secure, that means that your data applications and your infrastructure will be accessed securely. And also you must make sure that the endpoints, which is also what they use to access the infrastructure and the data, is also compliant in accordance to what the organization requires. And that was the end of my slides. I didn't have lots of slides. So as I said, I want to show you an instance of a breach that happened. But before I go there, maybe I can just walk you a quick overview of the breach, then you cover it on the investigation portal. So what happened over the weekend is an actor, a bad actor, who is now the hacker, was able to compromise one of our accounts, and they gained access in the tenant, in the resources. And through the access that they got, as we said, what the hackers normally do is to attempt to do lateral movements, whereby they start to discover other accounts that they can infiltrate. And if they get an account that has a privilege, they can now give themselves the admin rights to be able now to perform more malicious activity. So I'll take you through some of the solution that Microsoft has provided in terms of making sure that your environment is secure and you can be able to detect and respond to such activities from happening. So I'll utilize, I don't know whether the fonts are okay or I can add, you let me know. They are visible.
Yes, they are visible. Okay.
All right. So we'll begin with the first tool that we mentioned, which is the SIM, the Security Information and Event Management. So the SIM provided by Microsoft is known as the Microsoft Sentinel, and it's a cloud-based, a cloud-native SIM solution that is located in Azure Cloud. So it can be accessed through the Azure portal, and this is the SIM. So when you hear people talking about SIM, at most in cybersecurity, you'll really hear the word SIM a lot. So basically now this is the SIM, and it brings in those incidents and alerts from the different devices for you here to be able to understand what is happening in the environment and take actions in what you're supposed to implement. So how does the SIM collect all this data from the different environments? So they utilize what is known as the data connectors. So they're able to connect your environment with all those different services that you need to monitor. So you can even integrate with the Cisco, Barracuda, Checkpoint is here, even if you have those F5 or the Forcepoint. So Microsoft has the capability to integrate with those third-party solutions so that you can be able also to get security logs from those third-party solutions. So when you bring in all these security logs and events to Sentinel, so Sentinel will use now the machine learning and the artificial intelligence capabilities of it to be able to analyze the logs that you're bringing in and give you the result. So if you go to the incident, Sentinel will be able to give you a list of incidents that have been happening in your organization, and now your security analyst or the security person can be able to start investigating this incident. So if it's an endpoint that has been compromised, so by endpoint we mean now those devices, maybe a laptop, a desktop, or even a mobile phone. So that's now what this is actually an overview of what we mean when we say a SIM solution. So this is actually now the SIM. So when people talk about SIM, you'll also hear another term, another term known as the SOAR, SOAR. So the SOAR capabilities of the SIM is now what they known as the security, orchestration, automation, and response. So that's the automated capability of the SIM solution to be able to respond and remediate such incident. And let me show you where it's located. So the automation capability are located here. They are known as the playbooks. So you can be able to activate these playbooks to be able to perform those automatic remediation in your Sentinel SIM instance now. So the SOAR capability is actually here. So for instance, maybe your Sentinel has detected an account that is compromised. So you can be able to set a playbook, which is now the automation, to be able to respond to that incident. And it can even reset this user password or even block this user from signing in to your tenant because it has been able to identify that maybe this user has been compromised and they should not be able to access our environment. And the way Microsoft identifies these activities, they normally use artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to determine whether an account is compromised or not. So that's actually one of the benefits of utilizing this cloud security solution, so that at least you can leverage the machine learning and the artificial intelligence capabilities of it. So let's go back to the incident. We cover the incident, the hacking incident that I had mentioned earlier before. So this was the incident that happened over the weekend, whereby some of our virtual machines in cloud got compromised. So Sentinel has the same solution. We'll be able to analyze the logs from the connected agents. So in our case, the virtual machines were connected to Sentinel, and that's why we got this alert in Sentinel. So Sentinel will be able to give you the involved entities, which are now the parties involved in this hacking incident, and it will even give you the tactics that the hacker used in accessing this incident. So if you're familiar with the MITRE attack framework, so this is one of the frameworks that MITRE has come up with in terms of explaining how this attacker was able to infiltrate our environment. So the way maybe I can translate this a bit. So the way this attacker was able to gain access, the first tactic that the SIM solution, which is our Microsoft Sentinel identified, is known as the defense evasion. So under the defense evasion is whereby now the hacker will be able to impair our defenses, because already we had set the defense, but that's one way that the hacker must do, which is to impair the defense by disabling, which you can see here, turning off the antivirus protection. So that's the first step that this attacker did to be able to compromise our resources. So they did impair our defenses by turning off the antivirus protection. So after that, they do a persistence. So basically, a persistence is what will enable them to make sure that even if I shut down this machine after I realized the infiltration, they will still be able to log in and continue their malicious activity. And another thing that also they did is privilege escalation, which is they get the admin rights and they can be able to do all the admin access in this compromised machine. So in terms of investigating with the SIM solution, so I can just give you a quick overview of how the investigation graphs appears. So this is what the investigators will be able to see when they are trying to investigate this specific hacking incident. So you can be able to gather the artifacts that were involved in this specific incident. So you can be able to collect evidence of the breach. So you can be able to gather these artifacts as the evidence as you are performing your investigations. So this graph will just give you a quick overview of the different activities that this hacker did when they got into our system. So with that leaves us with now the other area and another term that you will largely hear, which is now known as the XDR, which is the extended detection and response. So to investigate with the XDR, we'll now use this, which is the Microsoft 365 Defender. So the XDR is also another solution to enable you understand and respond to malicious incidents. So in this case, you can be able to get a quick understanding of how the hacking occurred. It will even give you the different artifacts and entities involved. And it can even play for you to make you understand how exactly this hacking incident occurred. So for instance, maybe for us, we can try to understand how this hacking occurred in our environment. So when you come here, we click to play this specific attack. It will give us like an overview of exactly how the hacking incident occurred. So we can resume the play and you can be able to see how exactly this hacker accessed the virtual machine. And what they did is using a suspicious RDP session. That's what the first step that they did to access the virtual machine. And actually it even gives us the IP address of the hacker that accessed this virtual machine. So that's the first step that it tells us that this hacker with this IP address, they accessed our virtual machine using a suspicious RDP session. And then after that, because they have accessed, they need the admin rights so that they can now disable the antivirus. So the next thing that they did is to escalate their privileges in the virtual machine. So we can continue to play that. So these are the list of the activities that they did. So it will continue to play for you the list of incidents as the graph changes. So you can be able to see the activities that this hacker did, and maybe I can pause at that point. And at this point, you can see uh, the moment this, maybe you can start from the top here because now there's the addition of virtual machine. So this hacker was able to access our resources via the remote desktop. Followed by that, they did escalate themselves to an admin rights. After they did escalate themselves to admin rights, they disabled the antivirus capabilities that was there because antivirus would have stopped them from performing any following malicious activity. But now because they disabled the antivirus protection, they continued performing their tampering. And in that case, now they started the lateral movements that we were mentioning. So with the lateral movement is whereby they were able now to access another virtual machine, which is now this one, VM1, within the same network, and they continued with their malicious activities using our VMs. So basically, that's how you can be able to understand how exactly this hacking incident occurred. And in your investigation, you can even verify the tools that this specific hacker used. So for instance, even if there's a tool that is normally used by security analysts to be able to determine about these people. So for instance, if you want to identify if this IP address from this hacker is malicious, there is a tool known as a virus total that is normally used to identify these activities or rather these entities. So if you post that specific IP address in VirusTotal, it will tell you whether it has been identified before as malicious or not. So in our case, you can be able to tell that this IP address was once identified by this security vendor as a malicious IP address. So that's a hacker's IP address, and they were located in Netherlands. So another thing that you can also investigate to understand how exactly did they turn off this antivirus? How exactly did they uh, laterally move within our networks? So we got these files that they did use here. So these are the 3 different files that they used to escalate their privileges and perform lateral movements in our environment. So you can even perform more investigation in the specific file. Even you can see VirusTotal has identified 53 out of 66 vendors have identified it as a malicious. So this is a really malicious file. It's actually a virus file that was utilized in breaking the securities of the VM. So that's an overview, and this is one of the XDR solutions that can be used in terms of responding to this virus attack. But again, we can be asking ourselves, how exactly can we prevent such an activity, such a security breach from happening? So with the understanding of these incidents that happened, as we saw, the first thing that happened was the suspicious RDP session. That takes us to the initial place that we should make sure we are protecting. So this comes down to 2 areas actually, which is now protecting the users and protecting the virtual machines. In short, that's the identity. These are the 2 areas. So these are actually the 2 main areas. So it was about the identity and the endpoints, because these are the 2 areas that were compromised and they gave access to the resources. So in terms of the identity, these users used a very common password that was easy to hack. And that's how the hacker was able to gain access to the virtual machine. And in terms of endpoint, which is now the virtual machine itself, it was publicly exposed. So it was using a public IP. So that meant that the hacker was able to scan the ports that are open in the endpoint, and they were able to gain access with the weak password. So in the identity, it can be protected with having strong passwords and even maybe using multi-factor authentication. And when you come to the endpoint protection side of it, is whereby now we can be able to utilize a service known as the Azure Bastion to be able to protect our virtual machine from the RDP session, because the session was initiated via the RDP, as you can see here. So basically, when you talk about Azure Bastion, is a service that will enable you to access the virtual machine securely using the RDP, without using RDP session. So you'll be able to use a browser to access your virtual machine instead of using the remote decks that normally people use to access the virtual machine, and they are publicly exposed. So that's one way, rather 2 ways that you can use to prevent and protect such a hacking incident from happening in the resources. So also, as I wind up, maybe I can also show you a different XDR solution that was also used in detecting this security incident, which is known as the Defender for Cloud. So Defender for Cloud was also able to detect the incident. And basically, Defender for Cloud is a solution that enables you to protect your cloud workloads, so be it in Azure, AWS, or even GCP. So you can connect your virtual machines here to be able to protect them, and even the on-premise that you have. So also under Defender for Cloud, the alerts were picked, and you can see these are the alerts from the virtual machines that were compromised. And if you select any of them like this RDP outgoing one-to-many, it will give you more details about this specific activity, how it happened, and what could be done to take action to it. And that's how the machine was hacked by the hackers, and they did the activity. But good thing we had our SIM solution and our XDR solution. We were able to identify it before they could do further damage. And maybe another question that maybe you might be having in your mind, I believe most of us here as students, you might be wondering, how exactly can we even be doing this? Well, we are not in the work, in the job markets or employed somewhere, we're just students. So actually this one, you don't need to be employed somewhere for you to be able to start learning how to do this. You can get some demo tenants for you to be able to utilize this. Like in my case, I've been using a demo tenant to teach myself how to utilize all these security solutions and to protect like in a real organization. So for you, I believe since most of us here are students, so there's this subscription which is known as the Azure for Students that Microsoft provides. So Azure for Students will give you 100 credits, Azure credits for free, that you can be able to utilize to maybe set up such SIM solution or XDR and perform your labs here and test out these different security products. So you can leverage your student status to be able to obtain the subscription and test out these security products. And on the other end, since the Microsoft 365, this is actually an enterprise grade security solution. And again, you might be wondering how you can be able to obtain this one. So this one is also quite easy to obtain using the Microsoft E5. Let me show you the link. So you'll just go to Google and you search Microsoft E5 developer subscription, and then you enroll to this program. So basically the E5 developer program will give you access to 25 licenses. That's like a whole organization, we can say, with the E5 license. So that means you have the capability to test out all the E5 capability, set up all these XDR solutions, and just gain the hands-on experience in terms of learning and understanding these security solutions, so that even when you go out there in the employment market, already these are things that you have done by yourself in these demo tenants that you can be able to obtain for free in Azure. If you're a student, you can get 100 free credits. And the other one that you are saying for developer, anyone can just join for free. You will get 25 E5 licenses to be able to practice all these different solutions. And with that, I've covered a lot. Whether there's any questions now. Any
Okay.
question?
All right. Thanks, Kevin, for such an intensive deep dive into cloud security or just some aspects of security. And I love the way you've walked us through real incident that occurred, and how you, as a security specialist, you've tracked it down. So before I open it up to others, I was just curious, why in your experience, why do organizations choose to go with maybe third-party firewalls as opposed to, or third-party security solutions as opposed to those that are cloud native? For example, in Microsoft, you'll find that very few people maybe use the Azure firewall.
Yeah. So actually, the main factor that we can say is one is cost. Most people, they consider it more expensive than the third party that they have already obtained. Another thing is also they have been some are tied to long-term contracts in their third party. Maybe you might get someone has a contract of 5 years to utilize a third-party solution. So for them to move to Azure or those cloud security solution, that will be like a loss to them because they're already tied to a long-term contract. And also in terms of the know-how, in terms of implementing these new solution, that is also another challenge that these people face in terms of transitioning to these cloud solutions.
Mhm. Oh, okay. There's nothing about functionality. One can do more, the other can't.
Yeah, so actually that's one of the things that people don't see when they see, they only see the cost because cloud is expensive because it can do more than the third party and the on-premise that you have. So that's why it's actually more expensive than what they currently have on premise. It's the functionalities and the artificial intelligence incorporated in it.
Awesome. All right. So,
Yeah.
guys, from the audience, any comments, any questions? Yes, Alan.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Okay. So in terms of market share, as you saw in my slide where I indicated that Microsoft is about to become a superpower in it, we really have to look into this. You guys have to watch out this space because Microsoft is really investing in cloud security. They're investing billions of dollars and also investing in manpower in ensuring that they are really leading in the cloud security. And already, even the reports released 2022 are showing Microsoft is really now even catching up. They are currently categorized under the leaders, and that's really impressive considering Microsoft security started just recently. They are less than 7 years. I don't think they have gone past 7 years. So it's quite a really new product, and already they are leading. So in terms of market share, it will really lead out here. Mm.
All right, guys. I know we've already passed the time threshold that we had, so I don't. Just some 10 seconds. If someone has something to say or a comment before I give some closing remarks. All right. My boss says, "Say it now or forever hold your peace." But, okay, but I love the way. What I'll maybe urge the audience now to take advantage of is something that Kevin has shared about Microsoft E5, my M365 E5 developer. I think I never knew that existed, and now taking that and combining that with the Microsoft free Azure subscriptions, I think you
Yeah.
can really do a lot. You can really teach yourself a lot, and it's let's embrace that and let's take advantage of that. But then, Kevin, I'd like to thank you again for sharing this, and we'll definitely look for you for more. And from what you've shared, we can really tell that someone is not just called a technical consultant for nothing.
Yeah, yeah. You have to learn
All
all
right,
this.
you have to learn all these.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you. So I've shared actually the link for enrolling to the developer program. And at some point you might get some challenges. So if you get challenges enrolling, you can just reach out to me. We can resolve it. Sometimes kichwa ngumu, it can sumbua you when you're trying to enroll. So don't worry, you can just fix it. I see Awad is complaining about my tabs. As a technical guy, you'll just get used to opening thousands of tabs that you have to keep them open, and you should never close them. I know I'm
Until
not
the
alone
laptop
on
goes
that.
off.